Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 472, an intro to the fear of Elohim, part 2, the 3 degrees of the fear of Elohim. The podcast objective is to provide an intro to the 3 degrees of the fear of Elohim. An evolution of dishonesty. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 320 of our exposition of lawlessness. In the most recent podcast, we began our intro into the fear of Elohim, the fourth of the 16 primary degrees of holiness and a focal source of all spiritual power. Along these lines, the fear of Elohim is the interval in which we overcome our sinful nature while making an end to the disastrous rule of self within our hearts. And as I have mentioned beforehand, this is the first of the 7 major milestones in your quest. Not only this, but this milestone is the foundation of all the others. It is the source. Ergo, you can do nothing of redeeming spiritual value if you don't overcome your sinful nature as a priority. For sin has a way of undoing any good you may have done. Therefore, we must take a closer look at the fear of Elohim so we can understand the steps we must take to unlock this amazing power of the Ruach. To wit, we must analyze the 3 degrees of reverential fear, as we have prior done for virtue, obedience, and faith. Let's get started. Now, per the image to the left, the fundamental degree of reverential fear is value vis-a-vis spiritual values. One of my personal favorites, your spiritual values are designed to defeat the spirit of amorality, i.e., the fundamental degree of prejudice, and one of the deadliest degrees of lawlessness. Along these lines, the battles you fight with amorality will not be easy. Remember, amorality is an evolution of dishonesty. And as you learned in times past, dishonesty is one of the most effective degrees of lawlessness and spiritual war. This is true even though dishonesty is not an overpowering degree of lawlessness. Quite the contrary, dishonesty is not very powerful at all, but she is very strategic and she is very intelligent, and her greatest strength lies in her ability to manipulate. This is where amorality comes onto the scene. To wit, dishonesty is designed to manipulate the boundaries of the Father's will so that she can unleash the spiritual disease of amorality. Here lies the problem. To wit, by causing you to operate in amorality, you will often transgress the Father's will without knowing it. Ergo, once you defeat the spirit of dishonesty, the first thing you need to do is to reestablish the boundaries of the Father's will. And to do so, you will need spiritual values, the first of the 3 degrees of the fear of Elohim. Your view of authority. Now, the next series of battles you must fight in your war with prejudice is with irreverence. As you have learned, irreverence, i.e., the focal degree of prejudice, is an evolution of unrighteousness, i.e., the focal degree of contempt. Not only this, but unrighteousness is an evolution of dishonesty. This connection reveals the sinister work of prejudice and contempt, which we have analyzed in times past, and yet I will restate it at this time for your edification. Dishonesty causes you to move the boundaries of the Father's will in the spirit of amorality. So you can do something you know is wrong without fully appreciating that it is wrong in the spirit of unrighteousness. Now, this is where the spirit of irreverence comes onto the scene, heavy, hard, and fast. And as it is such a crucial phase in your quest, I will offer it as an inflection point. Consider this, my friends, and be advised. If you have the Ruach of Elohim, there is a point following your execution of unrighteousness where you realize that you have transgressed the Father's will. To wit, you will come to see that you have misconstrued the spiritual boundaries. Here you will encounter a fork in the road. To wit, you can repent and amend the boundaries via spiritual values and honesty, or you can double down on unrighteousness and persist deeper into lawlessness. Now, if you follow the second path, you will become infected with the spiritual virus of irreverence, which is designed to keep you in the path of unrighteousness. For you will be infected with a distorted view of Elohim and his authority. That said, it will take an extremely formidable degree of holiness to defeat such a formidable degree of lawlessness like irreverence. Ho, my dear friends, do not worry. Rather, be of good cheer, for we have a champion. Reverence is here. Per the image to the left, the focal degree of the fear of Elohim, which is designed to defeat the spirit of irreverence, is reverence. Surprise, surprise. Now, it should be clear that your battles with irreverence will be similar to your battles with unrighteousness. The reason why is sure. To wit, irreverence corrupts your view of authority. Here lies the problem, vis-a-vis your realization of the degrees of power are contingent to your ability to submit yourself to the authority of Elohim. Ergo, if your view of authority is compromised, you have no path to operating in the power of the Ruach. And if you have no path to operating in the powers of the Ruach, you will not be saved. For look, listen, it has been written, but you shall receive power when the set apart spirit has come upon you, and you shall be my witnesses. And thus we conclude it is impossible to have the Ruach of Elohim and fail to operate in the power of his Ruach. And this is why reverence is so crucial in your quest. It is for the following reason. Reverence is the primary application of righteousness, and Yahuwah will not empower you to operate in his power under his authority if you are not committed to doing what you know is right. Now, this makes perfect sense, for in any other scenario, we would have men and women wielding the powers of the Ruach of Elohim, whilst they follow the path of unrighteousness. Trust me, this is a classic non-starter. Let me tell you something. Yahuwah will not sanction the unauthorized, unlawful use of spiritual power. Quite the contrary. The only ones who have been authorized to use his power are those who reverence him in spirit and in truth. And all who disparage the powers of the Ruach of Elohim, to wit, the fools who put on false displays of power, and the fools who don't believe in his power, are all operating in the spirit of irreverence. And none of them believe in his authority, which is why they had not been authorized to do his work. Not only this, but it is also why they are still under the curse of this captivity. Why many don't hear from Elohim. Now, the final series of battles you must fight in your war with prejudice is with blasphemy. Along these lines, blasphemy, like all the critical degrees of lawlessness, is strategic in his approach. Consider this. Blasphemy does not come onto the scene until you have been infected with immorality and irreverence. From there, he begins to push you into the worst acts of immorality and irreverence to the point where he can force the Ruach of Elohim out of your life to reinforce the act of self rule. Now, here again, this is the nature of all the critical degrees of lawlessness, vis a vis, after the leading degrees do their dirty work, the critical degree arrives onto the scene to subject you to the full force of a spiritual disease. And in the case of blasphemy, his counterwork in subjecting you to the nth degree of prejudice is to cause you to elevate the Ruach of self above the Ruach of Elohim. And this is the highest degree of blasphemy. To wit, as prejudice is designed to cause us to be respecters of persons, the deepest infection of this spiritual disease causes you to respect yourself above all others. This includes Elohim, which is why it is the one sin that won't be forgiven. Now, per the image to the left, the critical degree of reverential fear, which is designed to defeat the spirit of blasphemy, is worship. This makes perfect sense. For how can you engage in blasphemy if you are in a constant state of worship? The short answer is you can't. Ergo, you will find worship to be one of the more critical powers you ever unlock. The same rule applies to purification, transformation, reliance, and all the critical degrees of holiness. As it pertains to worship, this degree will defeat the counterwork of blasphemy by ensuring you never elevate anyone or anything above Elohim and his authority. This is why worship is the juncture in your quest where you gain the victory over your sinful nature and the Ruach of self. My dear friends, hear me carefully as I say, it is impossible to engage Yahuwah in divine worship if you are defiled by the Ruach of self. Trust me, it's another classic non-starter. And if you think otherwise, you clearly do not know Yahuwah Elohim. Therefore, I encourage you to look forward to what the Ruach has to say concerning the matter of true worship. For we are in a nation and amongst a people who have no idea what worship really is or what it really means. And this is one of many reasons why they don't hear from Elohim. Now, here is the final word. A fateful sound we all have heard. Fear Elohim and guard his word. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, this is the whole duty of man. This is the baseline of our judgment. For look, listen, it has been written. Let us hear the conclusion of the entire matter. Fear Elohim and guard his commands, for this is the whole duty of man. For Elohim shall bring every work into judgment, including all that is hidden, whether it be good or whether it be evil. Look again, my friend, and listen. I saw another messenger flying in mid heaven, holding the everlasting good news to announce to those dwelling on the earth, even to every nation and tribe and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, fear Elohim and give esteem to him, because the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and the fountains of the waters. And another messenger followed, saying, Babel is fallen, is fallen. My dear friends, I trust you can see these verses apply heavily to the time we are living in. Mystery Babel is soon to fall. And of all the degrees of perfection, i.e., 64 diverse powers of the Ruach, the one that is specifically called out is the fear of Elohim. And you should know why. I told you earlier in the podcast, to wit, the fear of Elohim is the interval where you unlock the first major milestone in your quest. That is, your victory over your sinful nature and the ruach of self. Not only this, but the fear of Elohim is also the source of every major milestone you achieve in your quest. Ergo, everything you achieve that possesses spiritually redeeming value that can be used towards your election into the renewed nation of Israel hinges upon your ability to walk in the fear of Elohim. Heretofore, I recommend fear Elohim and give esteem to him and worship him in spirit and in truth. And when the harvest comes, your tree of life will not be barren, for it will be overflowing and filled with good fruit. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on all the lessons you have heard this week and ask the Father to give you clarity on anything you are struggling to receive. And if you are led, please feel free to reach out to me. You can fill out a form on our website and let us know what questions you have. And remember, the only question that can truly hurt you is the one you fail to ask. Last but not least, enjoy the upcoming Shabbat and the weekend, and be ready to get back at it next week as we continue to make our calling and election sure in pursuit of the precious and priceless seal of Elohim. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 472, an intro to the fear of Elohim, part 2. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 473, an intro to spiritual values, part 1. I will post this podcast on Monday, May 19th, 2025. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the spirit of Elohim, continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.